Welcome to this special masterclass that we are having in the Shee Sisterhood with Yvonne from Wild Womb Healing. I am so excited about this topic because it's something I'm curious about. And when I'm curious about something, I always love bringing on people who can really give me the information and to guide me in how to go deeper. So today we're going to be talking about Yoni steaming. It's a hot topic. A lot of people are talking about it, but I don't know if so many of us are actually doing it as women. And so I really want to learn about it, and I want to transform that today. I want us all to feel excited about steaming our yoni and maybe release some of the stigma around it. Because I think that's part of the problem is that there's a stigma around like this idea, or that it has to be hushed. Like how like our bleed used to be a really hushed topic. Nobody ever talked about using tampons, or it was like fearful to go into the drugstore to buy pads. Now it's like anyone can go, and it's no longer the stigma. Maybe it's age, I'm not sure, but I want that to be the shift that we start to see with Yoni steaming as well. So I brought Yvonne on here to talk all about Yoni steaming. So welcome, Yvonne. I'm so excited to have you here. Do you want to tell us a little bit about Wild Womb Healing and the work that you do?
Yes, absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you for having me here. And thank you for everyone who's listening in. I'm actually super excited to talk about this. So like Kate already said, my name is Yvonne and I'm the heart and soul of Wild Womb Healing. And I am so very passionate about supporting women in all stages of life. And I do so usually with foods, herbs, lifestyle changes, and I always integrate the emotional and energetic side of health as well. And of course, Yoni steaming. That's why we're here today to talk about that. And I am a certified Yoni steam practitioner. I'm still a student of the Peri-Steam Hydrotherapy Institute, where we go deeper into the understanding of menstrual cycles based on traditional Chinese medicine. So basically reading the menstrual cycle. Yeah.
Nice. Okay, so Yoni steaming. What got you into Yoni steaming? What kind of ignited that fire to learn about it and to even start to do it as your own practice?
I think the first time, it was in 2017, I saw a gathering. I think it was actually a herbal group, and they had actually my teacher there to train their herbalists in Yoni steaming. And so I was like, oh, well, this is interesting. And then the second time I saw her at a summit talking about the Yoni steaming. And so I was really intrigued, and I tried it on my own at home because I was always into herbs. Like my whole life, I grew up with herbs. So I thought, well, I can do this on my own. And I did. And I liked it so much. And I thought, well, at that time, I was still facilitating New Moon Women's Circles. And I thought this would be really something to bring to other women. So, they have something else to help them besides, going to the doctor and maybe get prescription drugs, right? So then I wanted to learn more, go deeper, and have an understanding of, what to do and what not to do, all those things. And I took training in 2018. And yeah, that's how it all came about.
Okay, well, let's dive in. What is Yoni steaming and why should we care about it?
Yeah. So Yoni, for everyone who doesn't know, it's a Sanskrit word for sacred portal. And I like to call it Yoni steaming, but it's also known as vaginal steaming, pelvic steaming, womb steaming, and peri steaming. And peri comes from perineum. So that brings us to how it actually works, because I always say it's like a facial steam, like a facial herbal steam, but you're sitting over top of it with no pants on. So the warm steam rises and it touches your perineum first. That's why my teacher calls it peri-steaming, because it's not just affecting the vagina. So that's why I like to call it Yoni steaming, because sacred portal, I think it's just beautiful and it fits to the beautiful practice. But anyway, so the steam rises, touches the perineum first, the outer genitals, and then moves up the vaginal canal and then reaches the cervix. And depending on when you're steaming, it may even enter the uterus, depending on where you are in your cycle, or maybe you're postpartum. So it could reach into the uterus, but even if it doesn't, All of our reproductive organs are connected through blood vessels. So the steam creates circulation. And so all the blood vessels will carry that circulation through all the reproductive organs. So they will be all affected by it, and even your digestive system, your whole lower abdomen, and actually your whole body. And additionally, we will absorb the properties of the herbs into our bloodstream. So this is basically quickly how it works, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, I was muted there for a minute. Yes, totally makes sense.
Yeah. Awesome.
Sorry.
Yeah. And should I just
Yep.
go ahead?
Yeah. Continue on.
Yeah. Okay. So most people always wonder, like, where is it coming from? It's something new, like new age thing, but it's not. It's actually an ancient practice, and it's traditionally used all over the world. It's only that in the Western world, allopathic medicine was pushed and we kind of forgot about it. Nobody really used it anymore. But it's still being used across the globe in different cultures, mostly for postpartum steaming, which it was traditionally used for too, but also for menstrual cycle, womb care, and fertility. So there's actually a hospital in Korea that uses vaginal steaming for any type of menstrual cycle issues.
That was
And
going to
we
be one of
have,
my questions is how does it affect the menstrual cycle? Which you can either answer now or later. But yeah, that would be one of my questions is what are the benefits around the menstrual cycle?
yeah. Do you want to go into it right now?
Sure.
Okay, so well, that would come next. Why would you even want to steam, right? Because there's like a whole long list of why would you want to even try that. I mean, some people are just curious and they just want to know, and it feels good, and that is a big part of steaming, is the wellness part. It brings relaxation, it brings deeper sleep, and increases vaginal nectar. And some people use it to enhance their libido, just steaming before sex or even after, just for cleansing purposes or to prevent pregnancy, maybe. But for the menstrual cycle, it's huge. I think that is probably the biggest reason why women seek steaming now, because it helps with anything you can basically think of, like menstrual cycle pain and clots and pelvic pain, heavy bleeding, irregular cycles. Yeah, anything you can think of that affect that women would have issues with the menstrual cycle, it could basically help.
Yeah. And it's really interesting because from like the line of work that I do and working with fertility and menstrual disorders, my experience of working with clients is that a lot of the times there's a few things that happen. First thing that I always notice when people come to me and they're either having fertility issues or there's some kind of menstrual disorder is that first, they're very disconnected from the space of their womb. They've never been taught that this is a part of their body. Like it's like the womb is the belly. Like to them, it's like there's no difference between the digestive and the womb space, right? Like there's just this really big, both mental and emotional disconnect happening there. And so part of the work that I like to do is try to get them to connect the space physically with touch. Like, can you map out where your uterus is? Like, do you even know it's not your belly button? Right. And so like for them to be able to go, oh, that's where it's at. Right. And to then to feel comfortable. Like, I think there's like, I remember even the first time I was shown to map and I was like trying to show people online, I was like, I'm like getting right down there with my hands on video, and not that it's like, it's just like lower belly. But there was this mental thing for me that it was like, is it appropriate for me to put my hands down here while I'm on video? Although I was still fully clothed, I was like in a total region that's not like, I don't know. There is this mental block, my own stuff happening from my own disconnect of how sacred the space is and how it's so, we don't go there. We don't touch it, right? We can touch our heart. We all know where our heart is. We have no fear of putting our hands on our heart space. But if someone says to put our hands on our womb, it's like, is anyone watching? Right?
Yeah.
And so like, it's about getting people to connect the space and to kind of see like, where is their womb? And why are we not making this a daily practice of like connecting and seeking it? So that's the first thing that I've noticed is that when women come to me with menstrual disorders or fertility issues, there's no brain womb space connection. Like there's no connection there. And then the second is that I often notice that a lot of these disorders always come back to the fact of this lifestyle of constantly pushing, which we
Mhm.
become overwhelmed with stress, right? It's like we are on a very linear path of wanting to achieve and not really honoring and really feeling into this idea of being cyclical, of like that it's okay to not be the same person every day. Like we do not have to be ovulation Kate every day. In fact,
Nope.
we need to have downtime, right? It's the same as like 24-hour clock. We wake up, we feel maybe a little sleepy, then we feel energized, then we get tired in the evening, and then we need to sleep, right? That's the same kind of cycle that a woman goes through, which goes to the connection of the womb, I guess, again. But the fact that we get so caught up in being very linear, and this was my story going into my fertility journey, was I was someone who was very driven, very A-type, very stressed out. So one thing that you said that caught my attention, that got me to go on this long tangent, was that you're like, it helps you relax. And
Mhm.
I like, for me to think about the clientele that I work with and knowing that so much of my clientele is dealing with chronic stress, which I think is the modern woman issue, and the superhuman or superwoman issue that we have of trying to juggle work life, home life, maybe parenting life. Like we take on so many different roles and then we like overwhelm ourselves. And so to have a tool that just helps us relax is kind of
It's huge.
beautiful.
Yes.
So I can see how if we have menstrual issues, whether that be fibroids, endometriosis, whatever the case might be, having something to help us relax is beautiful to have as a tool. But then also to think that it's an act that we're doing because we are connecting to our, like, we're not steaming our vagina because our toe hurts. We're steaming our vagina and we're connecting to our womb space, even if we're not really cognitive of it. Like we are doing something for our uterus, something for our womb, something for our cervix. Like we are connecting to a space of our body that we're very disconnected from. And so
Yeah.
to me, that feels like with one tool, I'm hitting both things that I deal with clients all the time, and that I deal with them with myself, right? Of being able to
Right.
connect to that womb space, being able to de-stress the body. So sorry for my long tangent.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, you are totally right. I think it actually hits all the components that we want to hit. Because, first of all, we need to take responsibility for ourselves and take that time. And I feel like, even for myself, sometimes I do have my own regular Yoni steaming schedule. But sometimes it's like, oh my God, I don't have time. And how am I going to fit this in? But once you prepare everything and you sit down, it's just this big, like, and you know what it does to your pelvic floor, right? Like you're totally relaxing, you're opening up, and you're receiving
Mhm.
because of that. And then usually you set it up in your own space. You're by yourself, maybe you put some music on or whatever you do, but it's your time.
Mhm.
And then I feel like, because we use it for release, so we use it like for trauma, energetic, or emotional release. So a lot of times when women do it the first time, they start crying because now all of a sudden they are fully relaxing without, pulling their lower belly in or clenching their butt cheeks, and, everything's opening. And so then they start crying, which is normal
Mhm.
because you are having this energetic emotional release. And yeah, so you're not just doing the physical component, and even within the physical, you're touching different components of it, like you're just saying stress and whatever disorder you're working on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's beautiful. So like when I think of wanting to increase circulation and think of the disorders that are coming to my mind, and I guess I know clients that also use this as part of their tools to help cope with pain, would be people who have like those very painful periods or heavy bleeding or fibroids or endometriosis. I know of people that use Yoni steaming as part of their medicine to help their body with healing from these things. And, taking a step back of just thinking about, connecting to that womb space and making it a ritual, which it really does feel like a ritual because like you said, it's like this sacred portal, right? I can see how that helps with PCOS as well, of that's like having something. Because when I work with people with PCOS, one thing that I always say is like, you need to start creating rituals of how you want your cycle to flow, rather than saying like, I have no idea what day I'm on. My cycle's all over the place. It's like, can you start to create the rhythm that you want to see in your body? Can you start to create that experience that you're hoping to achieve? Even if it doesn't line up perfectly, it's kind of like that idea of like faking it until you make it or dressing for the part, right? Like show up. And then this would be like a really beautiful ritual to bring in for people who have irregular periods, of being able just to have the sacred like time that they have, that they know that like I do this during my follicular phase, or I do this during my ovulation, or like knowing when to kind of do it in their body, of when they're kind of calling in that part of their body to create that messaging, I guess. Am I correct in that assumption?
Yes, because we use it for irregular cycles, or even like when you're talking about PCOS or maybe an ovulation, like if somebody's not ovulating, they don't get their period. And so, like you said, you want to set the flow. You don't want to just, you want to sit in the driver's seat. Let's put it that way.
Yes.
So then you can steam like on a full moon, on a like waning moon, and then on the new moon, on the waxing moon. So just to maybe hopefully align with the moon cycle, because I mean, we are connected to the moon cycle anyway. So our emotions, if we don't have a period or a menstrual cycle right now, or a very irregular one, then at least we can connect to the moon, and that in turn will help us then to bring in like our menstrual cycle on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm. And I think like that's the key, is like we, and this is part of like how the women's body has been viewed, and maybe how women have been viewed, like not to go down this whole big talk about feminism, but we really weren't part of medical studies for a long time, so we were just categorized the same as men, right? Like our body operates exactly the same as theirs, and that's not the reality. And so part of this new relearning of our body, of understanding and decoding our rhythm, is that it's giving us tools so that we can become empowered in our body, and we can become empowered in our our wellness and in our health. So I honestly believe when it comes to women's health, there's a reason why the period is the fifth vital sign, is that it tells us so much about what's happening in through all of the systems of our body. And so if we can tap into this wisdom, if we can start to find tools that gets us to communicate with our womb, that starts to help us navigate or to create balance in our cycle, which then relates to balancing in our hormones, that we can start to shift our wellness. We can start to shift some of these experiences or dis-ease, like not disease, but dis-ease in the body, so that we can come into balance. And like, it's all these little tiny tools. And this is where I think like ancient wisdom and medicine is so powerful. Like we label it new age, but it's been carried around for years, of why this was encouraged by alternative approaches, if we want to call it that, for centuries, is because it was a tool for women to be well. And we've been disconnected from that. And I think, and part of that disconnect, if people don't know, kind of happened during the industrial age, when we needed people to come into the workforce, right? And so we needed them to work on a clock versus on a cycle. And now this is like this thing of like, how can we start to reframe everything so we can come back into cyclical living, come back into honoring our rhythm, while still existing in a modern world without feeling overwhelmed by recreating, right? And this is where this is a beautiful tool. It's not something that's going to create more stress or another to do on your list. This is like, I'm going to just relax and steam my yoni.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
think it's beautiful. These are all like my aha moments that I'm having right now. So, okay. So let's get into like, how do you steam your yoni?
All right. So anybody can do it. And I just wanted to say steaming is for all people of all ages. So it's not just for, you will have to have, your menstrual cycle and you have to be a woman or whatever it is. There's no stigma. So it's for all people of all ages. So way beyond menstrual cycles, we can use steaming, like after like post-menopause, even for men, it has been used. So I just wanted to mention that briefly.
Mm.
How we do it, anybody can do it at home, starting at home with a pot of water. Really, really simple. So like we said before, it creates circulation. So all you need is hot water. So you just prepare a pot with hot water, you would kneel over it, and that could be your steam. Really simple. For anybody who doesn't have a budget to buy herbs or, no access or whatever it is, anybody can start doing it and get at least the circulation part of it and the relaxation part. So if this is all you have, you can set it up super, super simple. You just put a towel down, you heat up your water. Once it's hot, you wrap your pot in a towel, set it down, and maybe set up in front of a couch. You put 2 pillows down for your knees and you kneel over the pot, making sure it's not too hot. You don't want to burn yourself. This is about, not entering it, but relaxation, right? So if it's too hot, you get off again. You wrap something around your lower half of the body. So wrapping yourself up with the blanket so you keep the heat in. And why you're setting up in front of a couch or something is because then you can rest your elbows and your head on the couch. And you don't have to carry all the weight on your knees and legs the whole time, because that can be really, really hard for some people. And maybe it's not really relaxing. I do have some clients, they love doing it that way because they think it's like more of the connection to the feminine, to the primal. They don't want to have a steam stool. They don't want to have a steam box because they really like this. Others are like, I can't do this. My knees hurt, my legs hurt. This is too much. I want to sit on something, right? But this is a super simple way to start at home. We can talk about this later, but on my website, you can sign up to get my free video, and it just shows you how to set it up. So we can talk about the website and stuff later, but it's there. Then I brought this here. I do have these steam stools available. They're like a crescent moon. And so you set the stool up and put the pot underneath and sit on top of it. It almost looks like a yoga stool, right? Like where you do like headstands on it. Yeah. So you just put your pot underneath, you sit on top, and then these ones they come apart so I can ship them. So yeah, you wrap something around so you keep the heat in, and you just sit comfortably on that. Or there's actual boxes like with the hole on top. Some people use chairs, they just cut a hole into the chair. People can come up with all kinds of things just to make it really more comfortable than kneeling if they don't like it.
I've also heard once before of like cleaning your toilet, obviously, and then putting a glass bowl with steaming water in that. And you can sit on the toilet seat that way if you wanted to, but that's something I've heard one of my clients do. So
yeah,
I don't
there's
know if that's
just a controversy about the toilets. You really need to make sure that your toilet is super clean. You don't want any bacteria, and do not ever use plastic bowls.
Yes.
There's just too much, there's too many chemicals that will be released with hot water and plastic bowls. I know on Amazon, you can actually buy vaginal steam kits and they come with a plastic bowl. I do not recommend that. If anything, for our hormonal health, we don't want any plastics.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally agree. 100%.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's a super simple way. And then we can get into, if you don't have access to herbs or you don't have the budget for it, you could also use some high quality sea salt if you need more than the water. Just a quarter teaspoon on like 1.5 liters of water, so not much, or a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar. So those are the things that women or people can do if they don't have access to herbs. Yeah. And
And
then you
then
can get,
herbs, like herbs, I think from my point of view, herbs are so beneficial because there's so much, like this is another like ancient tool that was always around that we become disconnected from, right? Like we think of drinking tea as just going to the grocery store and buy something that's already boxed. But if you can get like the herbs or some like an actual herbal mix for tea, it has so many healing benefits. And so I can only imagine it's like tea for our vagina.
yes, it is actually. Like some people even call it yoni tea. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And so, like I said in the beginning, you will absorb the properties of the herbs into your bloodstream when you use them. So, absolutely beneficial to use herbs. But I always want to make sure, it's not something where you have to have all the bells and whistles to start doing it. You can do it without that. And then, if you really think you need it, you move into the herbs. And with the herbs, I just want to say, wherever you buy your herbs, like if you don't do it on your own, if you know what you're doing, that's totally awesome. If you buy your herbs, you want to buy it from somebody that has a description on their blend. Who is it for and who shouldn't be using this blend? If there is no description, always ask the seller, like, I have like this and this going on. Am I able to use these herbs? And they should be able to tell you. If they can't, then find your herbs somewhere else. Because we see a lot of herbal blends that are just focused on circulation. And now you can imagine if somebody is already having too much bleeding going on. So they're bleeding, they have prolonged bleeding, very heavy bleeding, they bleed way too often during a month. Maybe they have interim bleeding or spontaneous bleeding outside the periods. And you bring more circulation through water and heat. And now you're bringing even more circulation with herbs. Really not a great idea. So you should know like where your herbs come from and what the blend is for.
So then do you make specific blend? Like, do you make a custom blend? Like I know that there's people out there that make blends for menopause, that make blends for fertility, but I know you're a herbalist. So are you able to craft specific blends knowing what a person's issues or constitution is?
Yes, so I do have a custom blend, but we also have 4 blends that are very balanced. So one is more like the gentle blend for people that bleed a lot, that couldn't take too many circulatory herbs. Then we have a blend that is more focused on the circulation, but it also has other herbs in it that are not just drying or circulatory, that are more like nourishing. So all of the blends are well balanced with one focus. And then we have one for like a cooling, moisturizing blend, which still brings circulation, but in a different way. So they're all balanced with one focus. And then the disinfecting blend, like if there is any infections going on. But past that, yes, I do custom blends as well.
So the infection one, that would be for bladder infections, yeast infections, things like that.
Yes,
Okay.
CV.
Perfect.
Yeah.
That's good to know. I have a client that I have popping up in my head right now. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
How long do you steam for?
So with the pot and the water, like I said, it will be hot for like 10 to 15 minutes. And if you don't work with a practitioner, that's probably all you should do, because you don't really know if you can steam longer than that. So we can steam longer with the burner underneath, but I don't recommend it if you don't know if that actually fits your constitution and what's going on.
Okay, perfect.
So to that, I want to say like 10 minutes is like, if you have an IUD, you can only steam 10 minutes. Like I just said, if you have short cycles, so anything under 27 days, or if you have a lot of bleeding going on, you shouldn't be steaming more than 10 minutes. But
Okay.
it's always good if you're not sure, ask a practitioner, or if it goes way deep, then obviously work with the practitioner.
Mm-hmm. And then my next question would be when do you do this? Like when is a good time in your cycle?
So generally you want to steam right after your period, just for the extra cleansing effect.
Okay.
So, and before your period, you can steam. And then you could steam with the moon cycle, or if you know your cycle, you steam weekly. So you can do a weekly steam, or you do before and after the period.
Okay.
So before the period, so it brings on the circulation already. So you're getting a good cleanse. And then after, you're making sure you have a full uterine cleanse.
Okay.
And past that, obviously, there are many schedules depending on, if somebody has like fibroids or really uterine disorders or anything like that goes deeper than, oh, okay, I just want to, I have some cramps and I just want to work on that. There's many different schedules depending on what's going on, where you would need to work with the practitioner.
Mm-hmm.
And that actually, I think, brings me to contraindications. So when do you not ever want to steam? So when you're on your period, you cannot steam. So anytime you're bleeding, and that means anytime there's fresh blood, even if you're spotting, you cannot steam. If you're pregnant, no steaming. And if you're trying to conceive past ovulation or insemination, you shouldn't be steaming.
Right. Right. Makes sense. Okay. Perfect. That's good to know about the whole different schedules, because that was going to be one of my questions. So that's really good to know. And I can see how like yoni steaming is something very simple, but it can also be something that can really be a craft that if we really want to deeply connect, this is where going deeper with a practitioner is super, super beneficial. Because I even think of like yoga, we can do yoga for our cycle, right? There's poses that are just pretty general that we can move through the 4 stages. But if you're working with a specific ailment in your body, to really get the benefit from yoga, it's to work with a practitioner one-on-one, because then you can really start to decode what's making things better and what's making things worse, what, helps, or how we want to tweak things. Because different, the 5th vital sign, different things that we're being told allows us more information to go in different directions. And so I can totally now see how yoni steaming is not just as simple as buy a yoni steam.
It can be,
It
right?
can be.
But you can go way deeper with it. And I think it's also, like you said, the 5th vital sign. So when I say I read menstrual cycles, so not just the period, but the whole cycle. So a benefit of working with somebody like that, you can address like the root causes. So you're not just steaming because it helps you with the pain.
Right.
But you're actually going into like, why am I having this pain? Like, what is causing it? And then you're working on the root cause. And I think that's pretty important, like that we come back to working on root causes and not just, managing pain. I mean, managing pain is obviously needed, but it shouldn't be the only thing, managing it or masking it, right?
Right.
We should go into the root cause.
Yeah. Beautiful. Okay. So one more question that I have for you then is well, I know you said all ages, all genders. So for teens, let's start with teens, benefits of teens being introduced to yoni steaming. Cause I don't think, like, I know that this was definitely not on my radar as a teen, but
No.
I know like even in the past month, I've had 2 moms with teens reach out to me going, I need to help them. What are some tools? So I can see that this could be a benefit to teens as well, of getting them into a practice. Your take on teens?
Absolutely. Same thing. I mean, most teenagers do have their periods, so we would handle it the same thing, the same way. What's going on? What do we want to help them with? Obviously, we need to know when not to steam and when to steam, but same benefits. It's just we need to make sure we do have like a gentle steam.
Hmm.
So if they're younger than 13, there shouldn't be any like really harsh circulating herbs. And I guess that's another thing to talk about. My teacher, she actually, and many other practitioners I have seen, they have young children and they're just interested in, just sitting on the box for like a minute or so because mom's doing it. And so they all let them. And so they're kind of like these little girls are growing up to knowing, okay, mom's doing that. And yeah, I can sit on it and it's no big deal. I sit on it they don't have the attention span to sit on there for long, right? And there's no harm. I mean, you as a mother, you make sure it's not too hot, obviously, all those things, and that they don't burn themselves. You wouldn't let your little child sit over just the pot. You would have like a box where the pot's secure in, right? But yeah, I think there's so many benefits. So if they grow up with it, it's totally normal. And then when they get their periods and they start steaming right away, because there is also a thing as like the maintenance steam. So even if you don't have anything that you're steaming for, you may want to do it just because it's a nice ritual for yourself and also to keep everything healthy.
Beautiful. Okay. So then what is the benefits for someone who is menopausal then? Like no longer bleeding or hysterectomy, I guess. So no longer bleeding. What is the benefits for them? Besides, I'm already going to say it, the obvious of having a ritual to connect with your body and your womb. Is there any other benefit for them?
Yes, so some women deal with vaginal atrophy, like dryness, so it can help with that. So we're bringing in all the moisturizing herbs to help with that. Uh, Cooling herbs we can bring in if somebody is dealing with hot flashes or night sweats. Obviously, usually we work with like foods and herbs then as well. But the steaming alone can do a lot, like for menopausal women and even other complaints that they may have. Like some of them have insomnia, right? And so getting a little bit of relaxation and better sleep would really benefit.
Mm, that's beautiful. Okay. Um, so those cover my questions that I have. Is there anything that you want to share about Yoni Steaming before we get into like how to contact you, how to look up your products, how to work more with you here? Is there anything that we didn't cover in the steaming aspects that is kind of like this is an important note that you guys should know about?
So we had contraindications, some sensitivities, but there are some other things that I just want to mention because we're talking about it. And I say, oh, it's so simple, you can start on your own anytime. So I think it's important to mention those things. So if you had tubal coagulation, so if your tubes were cauterized, steaming helps with softening scar tissue. So we always have to mention it never happened to anybody, like not my teacher and not any practitioner, that those scar tissues were actually gone after steaming, or that somebody had issues with reversing their tubal coagulation. But I think it's worth mentioning it that it may happen because steaming can soften scar tissue. So it can interfere with your contraceptives, I guess we could call it. Even if you have the Assure birth control implant. So because that there is scar tissue created with that one too. So it can soften the scar tissue. Another one is if you have the patch, because the patch increases the uterine lining and steaming helps with shedding lining. So like I said, nothing like that has ever happened, but we always like to mention it and make it up to the person who's steaming if they still want to do it or not.
That's really
Just,
interesting. I like that.
yeah, just to be aware that it could interfere with birth control.
Mhm.
And then women that had an ablation, like a uterine ablation, which is like cauterizing the inside of the uterus. And so there's a lot of scar tissue as well. So we just have to make them aware. Steaming softens scar tissue. So something could happen. It never has, but just the awareness. And then the client decides if they still want to do it or not.
Mhm. And I think it's so important for us to think about addressing scar tissue. Like this is another thing where a lot of women get surgery of some sort on their abdominal cavity, right? Whether that be like my case, ectopic pregnancy, but whether that be polyps or ovarian cysts or whatever the case might be, why you may have fibroid removal, whatever your case might be, why you may have had laparoscopic surgery of some sort. Um, we do want that softening to happen of that because like from a yoga therapist here, from my perspective, is that there's so much fascial lining that's running to keep all our organs in place. We want that to be pliable and movable, right? This is really important for our wellness and health of our organs being able to be flexible and move. And so scar tissue creates that restriction, right? Like if you think about cutting a shirt and sewing it back up, there's that little bit of a pucker. And so we want to soften some of that pucker so that there is movement happening. We want that to happen. And so I think that it's important that when we think about our our womb health, even outside of the realm of fertility, we want things to be pliable. We want to address that. We may not be able to completely resolve it, but we want it to still be able to be movable, right? And so if you have
Mhm.
scar tissue, if you've had surgery of some sort, even the smallest surgery, we want to work that. We want to soften that for our wellness, for our whole body wellness. So that's my little input.
Yeah, well, even if it's in the vaginal canal or perineum or wherever it is, like even if you after you had a baby, there is a lot of women that have painful sex because of their scar tissues. And so steaming can really help with that as well.
Um, and it's interesting because I think scar tissue, it kind of gets like, sorry, my coffee maker's just turning off on its own, if you can hear it. I think with women, we get disconnected from this idea of the scar tissue too. Like I know for myself with my first pregnancy, when I went to go deliver, I wasn't dilating at all. And it's because there was scar tissue over the cervical opening from a LEEP procedure that I had. And so the midwife literally had to massage that scar tissue for it to break open, for my labor to advance, and for my daughter to be born. And once that scar tissue was broken, like she was ready to come, and I wasn't progressing. And so the moment that that was softened, she came within 10 minutes. Like that's how quick and that's how powerful it can be of like creating that softening. So yes,
Yeah,
we want to address that. It creates so much more ease in the body and so much more wellness.
that's very
So
interesting.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that.
Hmm. All right. So how can people work with you? I already have like all these questions of like, I want to get a stool and and it's so interesting because my daughters are quite young still, but I'm just like, how can we make this like a family event? So
Why not? I mean, my daughter, she's 23 now, but still, I mean, usually young people like that are not interested in things like that. But yeah, she's like, oh, mom, when she comes home sometimes, she's like, I really should steam today. So for her, it's just like, yeah, well, I'm just going to do that because
Mhm.
I can and it's good for me. So,
I am on a mission to change the dialogue around how girls connect to their body through cycle awareness because and maybe it's changing. I don't know until my daughters get a little bit older and they go through the school system a little bit more. But I know when I was in it, like, I can't believe what I was taught of just like, if you have sex, you're going to get pregnant
yeah.
and you will bleed. But there was no like discussion around how our hormones shift, that we're not just one set of hormones like that. Like it blows my mind now knowing what I know about the female body and about our cycle and how important it is to know this stuff, not only for the physical element, but for the emotional, like what these hormones are actually doing to our brain and how it makes us feel with our self-esteem. Like, I think we could transform the teenage experience by just having a little bit more information of knowing that you are going to have blue days. And it's not because you're a bad person or that in some way that you're insufficient. It is hormones. Like, and so like to have these discussions. And so to create this dialogue about normalizing periods and normalizing things like yoni steams and connection to the womb and, really coming into dialogue with our body and our hormones, I think we can change so much of what's happening and how much we're seeing, at least I know from my own experience of suffering as a teen, not like physical pain from menstrual, but everything else that comes with going through puberty. Like there is a way to make this journey a little bit more pleasurable.
I
And
think it's really important that we are starting. That's actually one of my next things that I'm going to do is like a mother-daughter circle. And it
mm,
will be all about learning about cycles and, body literacy and I don't know, maybe a little bit about sacred sex. I don't know, depending on how old they are, but, at least how their body is sacred.
mhm.
um what products are out there and what can you do to help yourself and all those things. I think it's so important that we start them young because
Mhm.
then they don't have to go through all of this.
And can I just add in here? I think it's equally as important to start them young as it is for women who feel like I'm already in my 40s, like I've gone past all that. It's still important for you to learn about it so that you know how to communicate with your daughters, so that you guys can have a really unique relationship of when like there's this new communication around the cycle and how you feel. And this is something that my husband and I are playing with right now in our relationship of like, how do I move through my marriage while still honoring my cycle? And so like the little thing, and this has nothing to do with Yoni steaming, but I'm going to share it because this is important, that this is where it's not just about you, it's about how you can have dialogue. Is that, we had talks about me feeling like overwhelmed and burnt out. And I said, for you to have something to decompress your stress, like you want to go for with your friends, or you want to do something that's just like a day away from the kids and for me, and just like for you, can we try doing that or scheduling that when I'm in my spring and summer? So when I'm in my follicular and my ovulation, because I know I have the energy and the capacity to take on more. I know that I can parent the kids all by myself and enjoy it and love it and not feel like it's a chore. Like I can feel like
Yeah.
I'm in my bliss state while you have your time out. But when I'm done ovulating and I'm in that fall or winter state, this is where I need you to step up and give me some space to take care of myself. But it's been amazing in our marriage of how that little bit has shifted, rather than it being like, oh, you're cranky again, or oh, like I never get time for myself. It's now we have a rhythm. Like he's now part of my cycle in that he knows when he can have the space and the capacity to do things for him so that he can deal with his stress. But then he also knows how to support me so that I feel like I'm being seen and heard. And this is where it really works with mother daughters, right? If you know the language and you understand and you're being taught something new that you have never been taught in 40 years of existence, now you can share that experience with your daughter and be able to relate and understand and have a dialogue with her and create the space for her to be able to feel seen and heard. And I think this is where it has to go. This is where cycle awareness is changing the world.
Yes. And I think it's so important within families, like you said, your husband should know, like, or your partner, or, your boyfriend, or whoever it is, they should know what's going on. So they need to be educated a little bit. And if you have family, I think, so I have a son too, like yeah, I know he doesn't seem like interested in it, but he lives through all this. Like he hears all the things and, he sees everything. So he will know too. So when he goes into being a partner one day, then he already knows a lot of the things and will be more understanding. And I think that's where it's important to include the boys too.
Mhm.
Like you said, your husband as well, or partner.
Yeah.
And when you mentioned this is also important for women in your 40s or older, I often get to hear, like, when women see what I'm doing and they're a little bit older, they're just like right away, oh, I don't need this anymore. And I'm not just talking about steaming, but in general, the
Yep.
whole womb work. And that kind of makes me Like, yes, you do. You still need that because, I mean, when we look at ancestral healing, we go back in the line too. So when you're thinking about, well, I'm already past that, there may be still energetic holds that you're holding within that space, if you still have a physical uterus or not, that you may need to release because it's causing any other symptoms in your body. Or you want to keep your uterus, you don't want to have a hysterectomy down the road, or you don't want to have bladder problems and all those things. There's so much, and I just don't, it's sad that in our society we're just like, oh, I'm not reproducing anymore, I don't need this anymore.
Yeah. And I would like to add, like, from some of the, not my yoga therapy, but my energy healing treatment or training that I've had with the womb space. Once that womb has been activated, once that energy has been initiated in puberty, it doesn't leave until you die. So even though you're postmenopausal or that you're no longer bleeding or you've had a hysterectomy, that energy is still circulating through you. You're still experiencing all four stages that you would have as a bleeding individual. And so it's now just a different way to tap into it. It's now using the cycle of the moon and just creating this awareness of, like, really listening of, like, how do I emotionally feel? How am I physically feeling in my body without having that indicator of a bleed, right? And that still exists. You're still going to shift and change, and you're going to go in that cycle, even though you don't have the significant bleed. And so doing all of this stuff is just a way for you to still tap into being woman, having feminine energy, like just being able to really tap into a part of you that was activated and that you've lived for a long time. And the healing doesn't stop just because the bleed stops.
Yeah.
And the connection doesn't stop just because the bleed stops. Bleed is only one indicator. There's so much more that's happening. And that's the beauty, I think, of getting into sacred charting awareness, is that we're no longer doing it because it's a contraceptive or that we're trying to get pregnant. It's really about us coming into relationship with our rhythm, with our body, and having a really unique, special conversation with it daily. And so maybe that's a beautiful way to wrap up as well, is that Yoni Steaming is a tool to help us to get into this conversation, for us to, like, have that dialogue with the body of, I'm here, I'm supporting you. Yes, you're getting the physical steam as a ritual practice that's creating an experience, but you're also pausing in your own life for a moment, 15 minutes, to say, I'm connecting to you, I'm listening to you, I'm feeling things. I'm having an awareness. I'm actually having a somatic experience of feeling into my womb, feeling that steam, and connecting to a spot that maybe we haven't connected to all day. So yeah.
And I think that's huge because we are so disconnected from that space, right? We have been told that we're treating it as a separate thing, basically. It's not ever addressed. And so now once we change that, we change our whole health, I feel.
I completely 100% agree. Okay, so going back to how people can connect with you, website, Yoni Steaming, herbs, stools. How do they work with you?
Yeah, so I am most active on Instagram, and my handle is bloody.health. So not bloody hell, but bloody.health. And my website is still under construction, but you can still subscribe there to emails and get your free how to set up your steam safe at home video. And there's also a part 1 of a Yoni Steaming ebook that just goes through, like, where is it from, what does it do, and why would I even do it? So you can look at it and decide if it's for you. And so my website is www.wildwombhealing.com. And I'm on Etsy as well under Wild Womb Healing, and that's where you can get my herbs, but you can also always DM me on Instagram and I can send you all the links. Yeah, I'm mostly active on there, so that would be the easiest.
Perfect.
For stools, right now, I don't have any for sale. I'm hoping to get more soon. This one is just my rental. So if anybody's close to me, they can also rent a stool, which would make sense if if you don't want to invest in one, but you need one for just a short period of time.
Okay, perfect. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yay. Well, thank you so much for coming on here. Um, and for anyone who's watching this replay on the Sisterhood, you will have all of her contact information. And yeah, I encourage you to follow, to seek out some more information, to get the ebook. That all sounds really amazing. So I'm excited about starting to Yoni Steam. So I am.
Yay.
Well, and it's beautiful because we're recording this just before the full moon. So this will be perfect time for me to do it, is to
Yes.
do it with the
Could
full
be a
moon.
full moon ceremony.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I'm excited. Well, thank you so much, Yvonne. This was fantastic. I learned so much. And like I said, I'm just excited now to go ahead and do it. It was like that motivation kick to get me going. So
Yeah.
thank you
Well,
so
thank you
much.
so much for having me on here. It was really fun to talk to you about it too.
Yay. And we will have to do this again with another chat around cycle awareness. I think the two of us could go on forever about the importance of
Yeah,
cycle
probably.
awareness. All right. Thank you everyone for watching the replay. And I hope that you got so much good information out of this. I know I did.